We open the movie with Jimmy trying to score some weed from a weed dealer across town that he doesn't know, but his homie Arnie vouched for. The dude is rude and kind of racist, but he got different strains of weed, so Jimmy wants to try them all. The dealer gives Jimmy his weed and also offers him some crack. Jimmy declines the crack and goes on his way. Jimmy is driving home and he calls up his homie Oscar to let him know he got the weed. But as he's driving, he gets pulled over by the police, who just so happens to look exactly like the dude he got his weed from just a second ago. The officer takes him to jail, and now our story really begins. Rob goes around to Oscar's house so that he can tell him what happened to Jimmy. He let him know that Jimmy did get arrested last night. He tells him that the dude he bought weed from just so happened to be a cop, and that same cop arrested Jimmy. So they head over to Arnie's house to confront him about putting Jimmy on to a cop. He swears dude wasn't a cop, he was a mall security guard, and he was hella cool and offered him more bud. Even though they homie Jimmy is locked up, they still have a major problem. They ain't got no weed. Arnie suggests going to his cousin who just came up on a bale of weed. But they should know better than to trust Arnie at this point, right? They pull up on Arnie's cousin to get some of the weed they had. He just got through smashing some old lady. Rob, who's been eating pork and beans out the can all morning, decides he has to take a shit. So he uses Arnie's cousin's bathroom, but he don't have any toilet paper. Outside the bathroom, the fellas get the weed from Ernie's cousin, but it's trash. The good note, however, they only have to pay $90 for a zip. Even bad weed, that's a good deal if you in need. The fellas take the weed and dip. They head over to the mall to check out the weed man that Arnie was talking about. While they're driving, they get pulled over by the same cop that arrested Jimmy. And he takes their weed and throws it out. Now they head back home to try to figure out where else they can get some weed from, because that's priority one. They decide to go see Barney Bubble, who's a character within himself. He owns a shop uptown. He has good weed, but he's the only one in town that sells it, so his prices are really high. They're headed over to pick up the green, but they're still on Arnie about setting Jimmy up with a cop. Arnie says the dude was a security guard and they should head over to the mall to check it out. They make it to the mall and they see the security guard that looks exactly like the cop that pulls them over. And they put two and two together that they must be twins. This is where they figure out the scam. The security guard sells the weed. His brother stops them, arrests them. They get the money and the weed. They decide to come back when the mall closes so they can follow and get the guy. But they need some weed first so that they can come up with a good plan. They finally meet up with Barney, and he charges them $500 for an ounce. They didn't mind paying, though. They were just so happy to get some weed. Price didn't matter. Jimmy gets out of jail. He calls Barney because that's the only number he can remember offhand. He tells Barney to come pick him up so he can charge his phone and get with his people. Barney could have just called his people, told them Jimmy was out, and for them to go pick him up. Jimmy calls his friends from Barney's house. He lets them know he got out due to lack of evidence. They didn't have the weed. He's still messed up about the fact that he bought weed from a cop who just turned around and took it back. The fellas let him know he got half the story right. The cop was the twin. The fellas head over to the mall. They decide they're going to steal a car. They're going to knock the dude out, take his car, and steal everything inside. They see the security guard driving off the lot. They follow him to Subway and notice he leaves the car running. Arnie hops out the car, jumps in the driver's seat, and pulls out. He takes the car to a local park where the fellas meet him. After rummaging around the truck for a while, they find a few items: a watch, a Game Boy, and 2 ounces of weed. Oscar then takes the truck so he can get rid of it. On his way to get rid of it, he sees two women on the side of the road in need of help. He stops to help them, And as he's trying to fix that car, they end up stealing the truck. What they don't realize is they just took the burden off of Oscar's back. Now it's their problem. Oscar calls Rob to let him know what just happened and for them to come pick him up. But these fools take their time because they got to roll up and smoke a little bit of the weed they just got. Priority. After they pick Oscar up, they drive around the road and see the police officer has pulled over the two ladies in the truck. They figure this is the perfect time to head over to the house and steal the rest of the weed. They're at the house now, taking ounces and ounces of weed. The problem is they are not moving with any urgency. They find the coke and they spread it all around the house. They call the police so these guys can get busted. We see the brothers being arrested. First, the security guard gets caught on his way home, and the police officer is caught in the back of his cop car getting topped off. Our boys are living good with a couple pounds of weed, so they getting high as a kite. Boys made zero effort into figuring out whether or not they could get Jimmy out of jail. They were more upset at the fact that he lost all their weed. I believe the revenge effort was more about getting the security guard stashed than it was about getting revenge for their homie Jimmy. In fact, they never called Jimmy and let him know their plans at all. The moral of this story is, when you buy weed, instead of smoking on your way home, put the stuff in the trunk, wait till you get home, and you'll get to enjoy all your weed and won't get arrested or nothing. I Got Five on It is currently on Tubi. It also has two other movies. I Got Five on It too, and a third movie. They okay. I'll review them eventually. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you watching my review. Love you. Well, nigga, I'm homeless. Go hard or go home. Damn, my keys broke. Go hard or go home. Well, nigga, I'm homeless. Go hard or go home. Damn, my keys